The story begins with an average man who dies an unexpected death and reincarnates in a fantasy-like world, as Will, a baby born in the city of the dead. He is raised and nurtured with love by three undead beings: Blood, a skeleton swordsman; Mary, a mummified priestess; and Gus, a ghost sorcerer. As Will grows up, being the only human alive, he starts questioning his existence in this life-forbidding place. He later discovers that his three foster parents are hiding something from him. The secrets being kept from him unsettles him. Each day he constantly wonders about his foster parents' past or where the food comes from. In his curiosity, he follows Mary to a temple once. There he discovers Mary praying to Mater, the virtuous goddess who blesses people with gifts of the earth. But because Mary is undead, she is burned with holy fire every time she prays to the goddess. However, she is rewarded for her sacrifice with bread which she feeds to Will. Shocked to see her burning, he tries to save her but gets hurt instead. After realizing the sacrifice Mary had to go through every day, he finds newfound respect for her foster mother. Time flies. 5 years have passed since Will discovered Mary's secret. He is now 13 years old. Will continues to learn how to fight with a sword from Blood and with magic from Gus. Despite the harsh training he goes through every day, Will manages to stick to it, knowing that one day he will have to fend for himself. With his coming-of-age ceremony close at hand, Blood decides that he is now more of a capable fighter and brings him to the ruins in the city. He is left alone to fend for himself and is tasked to return before the day ends as part of his test. As Will desperately fights for his life against the undead creatures, he notices a malicious bloodlust coming closer. It turns out that the wicked malice comes from Gus, who attacks him without warning. Soon he comes down the end of the tunnel. Will resigns to his fate, knowing full well that no matter the circumstance, he would never hurt Gus. As he was about to give the final blow, Gus stopped and apologized for taking his training too far. He even went on to commend him for excellently beating a rare monster. Will managed to return home before the day ended and brought back a great weapon he could use. Turning 15 marked the day of his coming-of-age ceremony. Before his much-awaited fight with Blood, Gus speaks to Will and begs him to lose it on purpose. But he doesn't tell the reason. Believing that he is ready, Will challenges Blood to a duel, but they will be using real swords this time. As the battle draws to a close, Blood uses an underhanded trick where he uses his ribs to trap his opponent's blade. Mary steps in and reprimands him for using a dirty tactic on Will. Genuinely believing Will is combat-ready, Blood and Mary reveal their long-forgotten past and how they became undead beings. They battled the High Demon King 200 years ago, who led his army to ravage the land. As they were on the verge of defeat, they forged a contract with Stagnate, the god of death. Although they eventually managed to defeat the High Demon King, they turned into undead creatures because they sold their souls to Stagnate. Just as they tell the story of how Will came into their lives, Stagnate appears before them to collect on their debt. As Stagnate closely approaches Blood and Mary, Gus uses high-level magic to buy them some time to prepare. It turns out that Blood and Mary had lost their attachment to the human world when they deemed Will ready, knowing full well that they had taught him everything he needed to learn to survive. Without their attachment to bind their existence to this world, they no longer have a purpose, hence why Stagnate has already come to collect their souls. After the god of death was driven off for the time being, Will confesses to his foster family that he was reincarnated from another world. He continued by saying that he has retained all of his memories from his past life. After learning of their past, it wasn't until now that he has finally found his purpose. Determined to save his family from damnation, Will turns to the gods his family worshipped once. As Will decides on who to devote his life to, he finds himself drawn to Gracefeel, the goddess of light and flux. It is believed that she guides the souls of the dead into the rebirth cycle and uses her lantern to light their way. Will thinks that he had seen her when he initially reincarnated. He finally decided to worship Gracefeel and devote his life to her cause, to which he gained her protection. It wasn't long after that Stagnate returned to collect what was owed. Will heads out to face him alone. Will managed to fend for himself but later noticed that this was just a distraction and that the real Stagnate was already back at the temple claiming Blood's and Mary's souls. Just as Mary resigned to her fate, Mater intervened and protected her, which made Mary break into tears as she had assumed that she had already forsaken her when she became undead. With the help of Mater and Gracefield, Will defeated the evil god. With their souls saved from Stagnate, Blood and Mary were guided by Gracefield's light to eternal peace. On the other hand, Gus requested to remain in the human world, and with Gracefield's blessing, he remained to guard the High King's tomb. With Blood and Mary gone, Gus decided it was time to send Will out into the world to discover and live out his life with his people. Will decides to take on his parents' name in honor of his family who raised him, William G. Maryblood. On his way to civilization, Will runs into Menel, a half-elf archer turned outcast who later becomes Will's first true friend. Will is still in disbelief after meeting the first living being in all 15 years of his life. After sharing a meal, they later part ways but are still wary of each other. Later that night, Will receives a vision from Gracefield where he is led to a nearby outside village that was attacked by a band of thieves. Will helps apprehend the thieves. Surprisingly, he later discovers that Menel was the one leading the attack. After hearing out the robbers' motives, Will offers reparations to the villagers with treasures given to him by Gus in exchange for their leniency. Meanwhile, Will promises to cleanse the demon-occupied village to which Menel offered to help. After a day's walk, Will and Menel arrive at the village. Together with Will's magic and Menel's archery, they defeat all of the demons occupying the town. It was later revealed that the demon-occupied village they were talking about is Menel's village. Will helped turn the undead villagers through a peaceful passing into the afterlife using Gracefield's light. Menel is seen arguing with a ghost of a woman who turns out to be the one who raised Menel before she was untimely killed by one of the demons. Before she passed on, she mentioned a stronghold through the forest to the north where the demons came from. She also hinted that a higher demon controls the undead and that it would be in everyone's best interest if someone took care of it. Soon after, the surviving villagers returned and started rebuilding. While Will looks into the horizon for what the future holds for him, Menel approaches him and apologizes for his previous misdeeds. As his way of atoning for it, he will accompany Will in his mission. Will's travels take him to the nearest port town in hopes of buying supplies to help rebuild the village. On their way to White Sails, Will and Menel encounter Tonio, a traveling salesman, and astute trader, with his traveling partner Rabina Goodfellow, a halfling bard who is fond of telling and singing tales of heroism. Tonio and Rabina were chased by a rabid giant ape, who Will manages to drive off. They decided to travel together to White Sails. Will later learns from Rabina about the heroics of Blood, Mary, and Gus when they once defeated a wyvern to save the life of a half-elf girl. Tonio shares that White Sails might not be as peaceful as they think. The town scrambles in a royal succession struggle between Prince Owen, the previous king's successor, and Prince Ethelbald, the rightful crowned prince and White Sails' current ruler. Will and the group finally arrive at White Sails, where they are met by Bart Bagley, the local bishop. After learning of Will's devotion to Gracefield, he mentions that faith in the said goddess has dwindled since the War of the High King. The once peaceful city is suddenly attacked by a wild wyvern which the city guards struggle to defeat. Will and Menel step up to fight it and manage to defeat it. This courageous battle earned him the nickname the Wyvern Killer. With the recent turn of events, the crowned prince Ethelbald requests an audience with Will. In hindsight, Will uses this chance to ask for troops to fight the recent demon incursions and the demon boss in the deep parts of Peast Woods. Despite understanding Will's good intentions, Prince Ethelbald declines his request. Will compromises with him and asks for permission to hire adventurers and mercenaries instead. Together, they will fight the demons that not only threaten this town but the entire continent. Weighing in the backlash he would have if he granted Will's request, Prince Ethelbald is torn from making a decision. Suddenly, Bishop Bagley barges in on their conversation, stating that the church approves of such a request and would be in His Royal Highness' benefit to doing so as well. The prince agrees to Will's request under the condition that he be knighted as a paladin of the court. In preparation for their conquest, Will and Menel go to a local pub in search of adventurers to help fend off the demons. They initially struggled to find any until a rugged warrior named Raystoff volunteered to join their party. It wasn't till long then those other adventurers hopped on the bandwagon and joined. It turns out that Raystoff is a renowned warrior who earned the nickname the Penetrator because he kills his targets so quickly that people do not know what happened. The next day, Will is knighted and made Paladin of Southmark through a grand ceremony. Will's party helps with the relief efforts in the villages near Beast Woods. When word arrives that the scouting party has gone missing, Will, Menel, and Raystoff venture into the forest to investigate. They suddenly find themselves ambushed by a large horde of demons. The demon army was led by what looks like a chimera, a mythical three-headed winged creature. While the group manages to drive off the beasts momentarily, Will feels helpless seeing Menel seriously injured and unconscious. He blames himself and feels remorseful for his supposed arrogance in trusting others, the same people he has pledged to protect and keep safe. Will took his leave and resigned to his decision to fight the demons alone to avoid endangering his friends again. As Will rushes into battle in a frenzied state, Menel stops and convinces him to return to the village. Menel managed to get through to Will into trusting his companions again. Together, they worked out an airtight plan to eliminate the demon beasts once and for all. Will and Menel managed to work their way to the Chimera, to which Raystoff slips undetected and dispatches the demon boss by himself, much to the shock of Will and Menel. Later, Menel suggests that Will would make a good candidate to lead the surrounding villages of Beast Woods given that he was the one who liberated them from the demons. The series ends with Will agreeing after Menel makes a convincing argument that it would be both in his and Gracefield's best interests. What is next for Will and Menel now that they have a town to run, especially after learning that the demons are working behind the scenes to release the High Demon King? Don't forget to hit like and smash that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.